Thank you so much, and I hope you can hear me and see my slides as well. Buongiorno a tutti. So indeed, Marko Turpeinen is my name, and I'm the CEO of a company called 1001 Lakes, as you just heard. I'm also affiliated with a Finnish university called Aalto University, where I do research and teach. So I guess I'm wearing both of those hats in this short presentation that I was invited to do, and I'm very grateful to have this opportunity. So I will focus on data, data ecosystems, data economy, how to make it fair for different participants, and also put this into the context of cities and smart municipalities. So maybe before doing that, so just very briefly kind of, okay, well, why are we called 1001 Lakes? What's behind this name? So, well, data lake is a term that's been used quite a lot. So zeros and ones and lakes, and in plural, because the issue is really that when we have multiple organizations and very large repositories of these data lakes, how do we connect them? What happens when we have many of them, thousands of them? How do we make the data move between those lakes? So ins and outs, you can also read those as I's and O's. So ins and outs and ins. How do we manage that interconnectivity and movement of data in various kinds of networks? And then, of course, the third is that we are from Finland, and Finland is known to have significantly more than 1,000 lakes. So, that's also one reason of why we have this name. And so I come from Helsinki, or the region of Helsinki, and I wanted to put also this a little bit as a background here, partially because we work a lot, and I work a lot with the city of Helsinki, but as kind of an ambition, and this is the official statement of what Helsinki wants to be. Helsinki wants to be the most functional city in the world through design, digitality, and dialogue. And maybe functional here is the important keyword. Finns are known as being a little bit, we are impatient when things don't work. We want to fix things. We are a country of problem solvers, and this shows also in this ambition of the city, how to make the city to function as well as possible for the citizens. And there the role of all the digital solutions obviously are very much at play. Helsinki has also been quite active and open in terms of collaboration all across the world, but especially providing itself as a platform in national and European collaborations, and it definitely wants to do that in the future as well. Forum Virium Helsinki is one of the internal organizations of the city of Helsinki, which has been behind of many of these different activities that have to do with various aspects of how to make the city smarter: energy, mobility, water and waste, healthcare, education. And so I'm just highlighting this, that Helsinki wants to be seen as a platform of innovation, as a place to try things out, as the place to move the needle forward, and is doing a good job in that, and also looking forward to collaborating, for example, with cities in Italy in the future as well. But the focus, as I said, was more on data. And here is an example of some of the things from the city context when we have maybe new kinds of uses of data. City of Helsinki has highlighted that they want to be very good at making predictive services, understanding future needs, using data to make models of how things might evolve in the future. And then that kind of links then, well, what is the data? How do we get to these things where we can make, better predictions of, okay, you should use this route to minimize air quality, or if you have a baby pram and you want to use or reserve a spot for your travel for your baby pram in a tram in the city, so this is how you do it, or the other examples here. But the point here is that there is more and more of this need of deeper and deeper data, and that data is then used in some kind of a way to make smarter systems and using, for example, machine learning. And there we come to these questions of, well, what is the quality of data? Are we having the right kind of data? How do we gather that data from various different sources? And if we are moving from these more descriptive ways of using in the data in the different services into these proactive and predictive ways of using the data, so then we open up a whole new area also of different considerations that need to take place. What is the power of the algorithms? How are we making these kind of guesses of what people might need and what their future needs are? How do we make that transparent and ethical? So very important developments, I think, are going on there now and need to be discussed in various different ways. And this goes back then to, well, what is the role of the citizens themselves in controlling the use of the data? And one of the projects that we are currently having, this is a group of organizations working together with several Finnish cities, but city of Helsinki is actually taking a lead. A company called Vastu Group and we at Lakes are working together with Vastu on this. So we are building something called My Data Operator for the city. And I think if this is the first time that it's being done, at least, you know, with the specs of what My Data Operator might mean. But the idea is that how are, you know, the data that city in various different aspects, various different, you know, part of what cities do actually can have a comprehensive view on what kind of data they have about people, and how can citizens be much better in control in what can be done and cannot be done with that data. So that's the idea of the My Data Operator for Cities project, which, as said, is ongoing right now and could be seen as an interesting step also maybe for other cities, perhaps also in Italy, to follow how this could be tackled. Which then brings me to this question of fair data economy. There actually is a program by the Finnish Innovation Fund, Sitra, called Fair Data Economy. And we've been working together with Sitra a fair bit on this. But the point here being that, okay, so when we are starting to see more and more this sort of a networked way of using data between different organizations, and some have more of it, some have less of it, but the idea is that the data should be moving under some kind of rules, some kind of constraints. So how do we make those, you know, fair? What does fair mean? And there, I have three different viewpoints that I would like to introduce here as maybe starting points of when we think of fair, what do we need to take into account? So the first one is organization's view. So this can be any organization, it can be city, but it can also be a company, any organization. But when you think of, you know, their view of data, so you have closed our proprietary data. We don't share that with anybody. That's what we have, you know, and keep within the organization, intra-organizational data. Then you have the next layer, which is the confidential layer of data. So there you have very strict rules or agreements between different parties that this data should not be revealed to anybody outside that sphere. But then you have the next layer, which is what I called here distributed data. And there's actually quite a lot of that. So organizations have data where they want to keep control of what's done with the data, but they still, it's not a secret. It's just that in various different, you know, situations, the control of who can do what with the data, what are the data usage constraints, organization wants to keep a hold of that. And then there is open data. And open data, one characterization of open data is that it's sort of given out to the world, and organizations, from organizational point of view, you don't really care what it's being used for. As long as there's some interesting use for it, go ahead, you can use it. So those are kind of four different categories from organizational point of view. The second one is looking at this from a network-centric point of view. So you have multiple members who form this, and this term is used now more and more in Europe, data space, you know, actors who together form this network of parties that want to somehow technically, but also legally, connect to this joint data space, and that's a trusted space of actors. And inside that trusted space of actors, there can be also intermediaries who kind of facilitate those transactions. But then you have the world outside this, trusted world of data. And for example, international data spaces is one specs, one reference model, which is very much using this approach, that you have these sort of known set of actors, organizations, then they have these connectors through which they connect to this shared data space, and have kind of rules on what the data use can be and cannot be. So that's a second approach. And again, very important approach. All of these, I'm saying that they need to be thought at simultaneously. And the third one that I want to highlight is human-centric view. And here actually Finland, and I've been personally also quite much involved in this My Data movement, have been quite active in kind of, we need to have better control for people to be able to be on top of what's being done with My Data. So strengthening people's capabilities of controlling the use of the data. And this is directly now also related to the project that I mentioned earlier, My Data Operator for cities. And then when you look at these different viewpoints, so more and more I feel also that they are overlapping. They need to be thought of at the same time. It's very difficult to separate often what's kind of what's industrial data and what's personal data. And even if they can be, so the principles, you have to think of the principles of the data spaces and how you create these spaces. You have to take these viewpoints simultaneously, both the kind of the network view of organizational data sharing, and then the individual view of how does my data get used in all of these different sectors, all of these different domains under my control. If my mobility data should be for some reason combined with my health data, I should be able to do that. So that's one approach. Then I've been working together with IDSA, International Data Spaces Association, and a project called OpenDI. We actually had a task force, about 30 people, who came up with 4 design principles for data spaces. And this is a paper that's going to be published quite soon, so keep an eye on this. But I'm going through quickly sort of what are the high level principles for data spaces. And the first one is sovereignty. So again, the capability of be it an individual, an organization to define how the data is being used should be at the source. So the control at the source, and I think this is a very important fundamental principle that we at least are advocating. The next one is data level playing field. So there shouldn't be barriers for entry. There shouldn't be monopolistic situations. When there is healthy data space, the players are not competing based on who has the most data. They are competing who has the best services and what the quality of the data is. And again, I mean, the current situations with players with incentives to be kind of hoarding data on their platform and keeping it to themselves. So we should have a counterforce to these. And then the third one is decentralized software infrastructure. So having not a monolithic large one system, but components of systems that are interoperable, where we have agreed of the kind of the functional, the technical, operational, legal, economic dimensions, and therefore be able to build trusted environments with interoperability and data findability, portability, security, all of these good things that we would like to have as an outcome of a data space. And then the fourth is public-private governance. So when we have these data spaces, so we would like to have situations where the governance is done not by companies alone or not by governments alone, by a collaborative effort of bringing different stakeholders and looking into how these data spaces are what are the rules. Next, going to the more practical things that we've done regarding the rules. So this is actually work that I'm quite proud of. So again, connected to the Fair Data program, Fair Data Economy program at Sitra. So we have this model rule book for any kind of data ecosystems, any data network where you have multiple parties that want to share data. So we've made this, so basically open template for anybody to take as a basis for their use case, for their network, combining the business aspects, the legal aspects, the technical aspects, the ethical aspects, and even going into the level of here are sample agreements that you can use when you have your use case, when you have your network of parties. And again, I encourage you to take a look into this. It's available, open tool, and as one part of the My Data for Cities project, we are also creating a more specific template based on this template, which is really looking into the personal data issues regarding cities as we speak. So also stay tuned with that. It also will be an open that cities anywhere can basically use. Then there are more technical building blocks for trust. In the interest of time, I don't go into details. But for example, we might want to look into how do we create identities? What are more decentralized ways of doing that? There are several good initiatives like the ID Union, which is starting from Germany, and Trust over IP on this one. But anyway, so kind of what are the mechanisms for more distributed, decentralized ways of handling identities? And the other important trust building piece is how do we define these data usage policies and enforce them? So kind of both the provisions and obligations related to data, which is much more than just access control, but you know, what can be done, and how do we make that those actually are followed through and enforced. And of course, you know, this open approach, open data, open APIs, open minimum interoperability mechanisms like the Open and Agile Smart Cities Network calling. This is hugely important between cities, sharing practices, having, you know, different ways of you know, joint ways of combining the resources and the ways of doing things. And again, I hope that we can contribute, for example, the minimum interoperability mechanism for cities regarding personal data through the Open and Agile Smart Cities Network. So that's something that, again, hopefully keep an eye on that, and we will have a spec coming for that based on, you know, the work that we've done in Helsinki partially. And then lastly, this is a picture that I'm following from Sitra. So kind of as a story, so what could happen is that when we have this sort of individual organization starting to apply these fair data rules, and themselves then being more and more networked and coming up with similar basis of, okay, we adhere to this set of principles, over time, what would happen is that even without much of a regulation, the ecosystem mechanism drive into a more fair world of using data. That's at least is the theory that we are building our efforts a lot on. So thank you for this. Those are my connection information. Please send me a message if something here sounds relevant for your organization and you would like to continue discussion.